Hello, welcome back to Ycft. We were initially going to bring out a video on the Wolfman from 2010 this week, but that video needs a little bit more time in the oven, so we decided to do a review of Wolfman, the modern-day reimagining of the classic Universal's monster film, directed by Leigh Whannell, starring Christopher Abbott, Julia Garner, and Matilda Firth. We have to admit, going into this film, we were not that excited about it, not that optimistic. Not that I thought the trailer looks bad, but Universal had a really weird marketing strategy with this film. Like, do you remember when they released... Well, it's only that they released it. They had something at like a Universal Horror Nights around Halloween of a guy in a cheap costume. And I was like, Is this the
this
werewolf?
Is it. This thing.
So everyone just had this footage from their phone of this design, and it didn't look good. And then a week ago, or maybe a bit longer, they suddenly decided to release the transformation online, which we did not watch.
No, chose not to.
It gave the hint of, do Universal not have confidence in this movie?
Yeah, it was underwhelming, to say the least, when all of that was revealed.
However, I think we both were pleasantly surprised by this film. I actually had a very good time with it. I like to be surprised.
I also like to be surprised. It wasn't that we didn't have faith in Leigh Whannell, specifically, because we're both fans of The Invisible Man. We are both fans of Leigh Whannell in general. But yeah, it was just the weird tactics that Universal employed for this one leading up to it was strange, to say the least. So we were skeptical, but I really thoroughly enjoyed it. I really did. I thought it was a great reimagining of the classic story. And now, having actually seen the movie in terms of the design, it makes sense.
Without revealing too much, the design doesn't differ too much from what we have seen. It's just better. It's not a costume at an event. It's proper makeup under proper lighting. And it fits the world of the film. It makes sense. And it has a presence throughout the entire film.
Yeah.
Well, it is more of a Wolfman. Emphasis on the man.
Yes, definitely.
Design. And to me, anyway, when I was watching it, it did feel like it harkens back to that original Wolfman design, which was very simple. Just a bit gnarlier.
Yes.
But yeah, so I now kind of don't have a problem with that design, which is not something I thought I'd say coming out of this movie. Do you remember weirdly when Ryan Gosling was going to star in this film?
Yes, I do remember that. And as we were watching the movie, it dawned on me about halfway through that I can't imagine Ryan Gosling being in this film. Not that I don't think that Ryan Gosling is a good actor. It's just Ryan Gosling has now reached that point in his career, the peak of his fame, where everything he's in, I'm just very much aware that I'm watching Ryan Gosling. And I feel like Ryan Gosling in this movie would have been very distracting.
Yeah, definitely. I think Christopher Abbott did a really good job.
I agree. Yeah, I totally agree. It's also physically, his look is a lot more reminiscent of the Larry Talbots that we've had in previous Wolfman films, even though his character is not Larry Talbot, just, the dark hair, it's very reminiscent of Talbots of the past.
I think it's no secret that the transformation in this film, which is what everyone cares about in a werewolf movie, how good is the transformation, how does it compare to an American Werewolf in London? You can't really compare because it's not just one scene. It's pretty much the whole movie. It's a slow transformation, and I really digged that.
Yes. It was the strength of the movie for me, personally. I think, so I'll be totally honest, as much as I did enjoy this movie, it scared me a little bit at the beginning with what the film was delivering in terms of character dynamics, just in terms of, it takes great pains to set up the dynamic between Julia Garner and Christopher Abbott and their little girl, and, the domestic friction that exists there, and she favours one parent over the other. It just made it feel like, oh God, we're in for a bit of an emotional drama. And I wasn't down for that. But then the second he starts transforming, or the second you realise that the transformation has begun, but at a very painstakingly slow, really torturous level, I was locked in. And this film had me from that moment on all the way to the end. And yes, this film is just one prolonged, agonising transformation. And the use of makeup, the performance under the makeup was also very, very good. Full praise to Abbott. I was invested pretty much from the beginning all the way to the end. This was an emotional ride at certain points as well. And I have said in the past that of all the classic monsters, from, vampires, mummies, werewolves, what have you, I would always choose to be a werewolf because, it's one night of the month where you go a little bit crazy. It's easy to curb. You can lock yourself in a cage. You can get people to help you, whatever. It's not that bad. I'd rather be that than be a vampire or anything else. This is the first werewolf movie I have watched where I've thought, no, fuck that. I now do not want to be a werewolf because of this film.
I was upset going into this movie. I had heard a little bit that it might be pacing issues. I didn't really feel that. I was kind of invested for the ride all the way along. Something that does have to be praised, and I don't think this is a spoiler because I think it is shown in the trailer, is there is essentially a werewolf vision that as Christopher Abbott's character Blake is transforming, we're starting to see how his senses change, how he starts to see things. And that is a really, really interesting part of this film. And Lee Winnell with his camera work and his lighting, it's always interesting. It reminded me a lot of what he did in Upgrade, specifically. I think he's a fantastic director. If he wants to keep doing these modern reimaginings of Universal monsters, have at it.
Have at it, Lee. I have noticed already that inevitably comparisons are already arising between what's better, this or The Invisible Man, pitting them against each other. I'm not really prepared to say which one is better, technically. I've seen Invisible Man a few times. Obviously, we've only seen The Wolfman the once. They're very different monsters to pit against one another. They're very different films, too. But I did thoroughly enjoy this a lot. And Lee Winnell is very good. He's very good with horror, but he's also very good with emotion, I think, too. And the Wolfman is nothing if not a tragic tale, no matter how, no matter what era it's in, no matter what iteration. But it's also pretty hard, I think, in this day and age to do a realistic, genuinely emotional story of the Wolfman, to make it interesting, to make it unique. It's actually very simple what he does. Again, just thinking back to the transformation scene, that this is what the entire film kind of centers around. But it works. It's a very simple trick, but yeah, it works very, very well. But it's anchored by a really good performance by Abbott, for sure.
I suppose minor criticism, some we mentioned, that the daughter, played by Matilda, looks nothing like her mother, played by Julia Garner.
No, she does not.
And you point out maybe that's to show that she's closer to her father, the fact that she looks a bit more like him.
Yeah.
But it's a nitpick, really, an absolute nitpick. But I think Julia Garner is obviously a very good actress. She sells fear incredibly well. So while Blake is going through this, we are seeing the reaction of his wife and of his daughter throughout this whole process. And it just makes the film feel that much more tragic. And I think by making it all revolve around a family, there's a very small cast here. It got me so much more invested, and I felt so bad for these characters. Not just for Blake going through this horrific process, but for his family as well, having to watch that.
Yeah.
And in regards to what you were saying about comparing it to Invisible Man, yeah, very different movies. I wouldn't say Invisible Man is a monster movie. This is a monster movie.
Yeah.
A very grounded monster movie, and I was kind of all for it. So yeah. Surprised. Pleasantly surprised is how we would describe this film.
Yes. We did agree that we think this film was going to be very divisive with people.
Yes, very divisive. You're either going to love the look of the Wolfman, or you're going to hate it. I don't think there's going to be anyone that's kind of in the middle there. But you know what? It feels like a fresh take on a monster that has been done so many times to varying degrees of success. And when you have something like American Werewolf in London, which is always looming over any modern werewolf film, it's hard to stand out.
Absolutely. It's a fresh take on what is, let's be honest, a very stale concept. The tale of the Wolfman has been done so many times and done to varying degrees of success. But I think it's hard to make classic monster movies scary. And I think this does achieve that, but it centrally achieves that through the emotionality of it, through the tragedy of it. So yeah, it's fair play to Lee Winnell. I think he's done it. But yeah, I as much as I would recommend this movie, and I will to all my horror friends, I don't think it's going to be a winner for everybody. I think, yeah, we were sort of warned that there might be a few pacing issues that we find. I personally didn't see them, but I think a few people might.
I also want to give props to the sound design and the lighting. The sound design for me was always the scariest part of this film. It was done so well, and it's not just jump scares galore. There is tension throughout this film with a mixture of the soundtrack, the sound design, the changes in lighting. it all comes together to make a really cool, tense package. The woman that was sat next to us was terrified through the entire
she
film.
was.
And I always love that in a cinema audience, especially when you're watching horror, when there's people in the crowd who are genuinely scared watching it.
Yes, it always makes it for a much more fun experience. But yeah, you're right. The sound design is intrinsic to his transformation.
Yeah.
As well. There's some very clever, interesting things that Winnell is doing with sound in this film.
So yeah, that was our quick review of Wolfman. Surprised us? Has it surprised any of you? Have any of you seen this film? Thanks a lot, guys, and we will see you when we see you.
Bye.